Recording is started. And yes, then hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to our Wednesday afternoon call of the OpenChain Reference Tooling Working Group. Today we have a quite packed agenda. And because of this, I have skipped the news, as you can see right now. So only a welcome. Then we have this talk from Rishi about Porsche's landscape for open source management. And after that, we have Augustine on open source knowledge base or open source kb.org as a backend service for using open source and open data. And if there's then time left, I think we can do all other business. Having said this, before I hand over to Rishi, as usual, you have here the antitrust policy from the Linux Foundation, so that you are aware that, this is a safe harbor, more or less. Okay, then Rishi, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Do you know how to share the screen?
I can try.
There's a plus sign in the left hand, and then you can exactly.
Can you see my screen?
No, I'm seeing the OpenChain Reference Tooling Working Group intro slide.
I am not able to, so it doesn't give me an option. It just says manage presentation, start a poll, and share an external video and select a random user. When I'm clicking on the plus sign.
Yes, so you do not have this possibility to be presenter,
or is there anyone who can make me the presenter? Maybe I'm missing
Let me check whether I can do this, but I'm not logged in. Teilnehmer entfernen? No. No, I can't promote you to presenter. Can you perhaps send me the slides?
I don't have the slides. I will just, let's say, go walk through over the documentation within the Porsche space. But can you see my screen now? I was able to, let's say, share the entire screen.
I see, at least I see a foreign screen. I do not know whether it's yours. So with a big blue button thing, this I see currently. And a mouse moving, yes.
Also in the bottom it says mail Saxena Rishi. Should be Rishi's desktop. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you should.
And now we see slides.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
Open source office. Great. Thank you.
So, as we all discussed, let's say, on different occasions and communication which was happening, where we were, let's say, talking about in terms of how Porsche is, let's say, handling open source program office within Porsche universe. And when we were talking about this, then I think it's better to start off with a little bit of history. So we started off, let's say, at Porsche, establishing, let's say, a dedicated open source program office somewhere around in 2020. And from there, the journey got started where we all know that in the open source program office space, there were multiple strategies which got realized as per the market standard. And this is how, for example, we navigated over time. But I think that today's focus, correct me if I'm wrong, will be only to have, let's say, some kind of a walkthrough on the technical landscape on how we handle or target the FOSS compliance strategy. Because within OSPO, we are talking about, let's say, FOSS compliance. We are also, let's say, initiating FOSS security aspects, contribution, inner source. But I think that the majority of the heavy lifting, which we did actually, was to make sure that our FOSS compliance is, let's say, intact in a sense that we try to, let's say, achieve a higher degree of automation in terms of setting up to make our each and every product compliant. Is this understanding correct with everybody?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So when we talk about FOX compliance, I think that the first step actually was to set up and understand the nature, how, for example, the product team in an organizations are set up. Because when we talk about FOSS compliance, then in our context, we are dealing, let's say, with two streams in that way, where, for example, we are talking about the enterprise applications which are, let's say, needed, plus, for example, the softwares which are going into our vehicle. So that make things very complex. But when we target, for example, how to set up the technical landscape, I think we initiated first, let's say, a lot of time in the design phase for doing, let's say, the process engineering first. In FOSS compliance, I think the process, what, for example, we entered to agree, let's say, with different parties, or let's say different actors playing the role in the process life cycle, where, for example, we have differentiated this, let's say, an in-house developed software and a supplier developed software. So under FOSS compliance, when we talk about in-house developed software, then the nature of targeting, for example, the compliance is a little bit different in comparison to the supplier developed software. And for in-house, I will just, let's say, go through more in detail with the in-house developed software. So as we know the constellation at Porsche, that we are, let's say, the group company where, for example, we have, let's say, our daughter entities and subsidiaries placed, let's say, at different locations. And this is where the process applies to all in context to the subsidiaries as well. So we are not only talking about within the scope of Porsche AG, but we are also talking about whatever, let's say, falls under the umbrella of Porsche AG. When we talk about in-house developed software, then I think everything starts with, for example, how do we receive this request? Because there are constant product development happening within the Porsche environment. And the first question is, let's say, how do we get, let's say, this request to us to be able to, let's say, cater in context to that, okay, that product needs to be made compliant. So that's where the first system comes into play. That is, let's say, seen as a business system, or you can call it, let's say, a service portal, where the product teams are now made responsible to create a request that, okay, we are going live with either our product, or we are releasing a feature, or we, for example, have certain degree of upgrades with our software. And that's where they have to actually raise this request to us so that we are made aware. And then the onboarding process in terms of how they will continue in the journey of FOSS compliance takes place over that service request which has been created. Because for us, it was also very important that the communication channel should remain, let's say, one when interacting with multiple actors in the process life cycle. And that's where the first step starts, where we are receiving the request over a service portal. And that service portal actually allows the product team to create a request that is, let's say, visible to us. And then there are certain SLAs which we follow, and then we actually respond to that. Now comes, for example, the next step, where we go into an onboarding session with the product team. When we go into the onboarding session, then we try to understand the nature of their product, plus, for example, what is the setup on their code repository level. When we have done that, then we realize that, okay, what services we need to run on their code repository to be able to understand the nature of the code repository in terms of collecting the data And that collection of the data is handled by our core service, which is, let's say, OSS Review Toolkit. So we heavily rely on OSS Review Toolkit to make it, let's say, available towards our product teams who are, let's say, developer in nature. And this is where this service becomes the first technical service made available to them. Then it's about running the first stage of OSS Review Toolkit, which actually penetrates the code repository, gathers the information based on whatever package manager is used, and based on the declaration, it actually generates its own, let's say, metadata file, which is, let's say, the analyzer result, which probably most of you are aware if somebody is using OSS Review Toolkit in their context. Once, for example, we have the analyzer result available from the product team, we then pass it on to our central environment where, for example, the scanning takes place. So here, the key message is that we decoupled the OSS Review Toolkit as a service in such a way that we can formulate and form concern of responsibility and make the respective teams accountable and responsible to do their part. Because we started with, let's say, centrally operating everything by ourselves, but it became so difficult to manage because the developers in number is very high versus, for example, the numbers you have, for example, in your open source program office. And that's why, from a design standpoint, it became very important that how we decouple logically in context to that developer takes care of generating this metadata file on their code repository and handing over us the metadata file so that we can only focus on scanning to delivery towards the legal for the compliance check. And that made, for example, the process more faster, efficient, and it also, let's say, reduced a lot of noise in terms of back and forth understanding problems, because as an external to that code repository, I would not be in a position to understand each and every bit about that code repository. And that's where I think it helped a lot that the handshake was done rightly in context to move forward smoothly in the process lifecycle. The next stage is, let's say, once we have executed the scanning, the results are produced. The result production then leads to generation of the final output, which is, let's say, the data which needs to go into the analysis phase. And that's where we have our analysis team who is analyzing the data in the context that identifying if there is any gaps or if there is, let's say, a non-detection of, for example, a license or something is a false positive, which then needs to be enriched, which we call in our process lifecycle as curation. And then the analysts, let's say, are curating so that next time when a similar or a same information comes in, then the same data set which was enriched can be reused, which is also, let's say, part of ORT, because ORT, let's say, manages that way. And then it is, let's say, handed over to the legal department, and the legal department then only focuses in terms of doing a quality check on the complete SBOM submitted to them. And based on that, let's say, evaluation, then it is easier, for example, for them as well to provide, for example, the approval process. Once the approval is done, then we go back and approve, for example, their service request. And then, and for example, OSS software notice is, let's say, generated for them to publish into their product. And then they're good to go, even making live their product or, let's say, making live their feature. So far, so good. Okay, then I move on. That's the compliance process lifecycle, where, for example, we are targeting the code repositories. And because we have variety of products which are playing the role in the universe, that's where, for example, we cannot be bounded to, let's say, one product or two product. I mean, it comes with, let's say, very versatile way of, for example, doing software development and building their products, because we give the choice and the decision making on the product team side, that it is totally depending on their skill set and competence in terms of whichever language, whichever product they want to use in their product line to deliver, for example, the final output, meeting the business needs or requirement. So the code repositories, let's say, are placed on different products. We were able to, when we started the journey in 2020, then there was, let's say, also a lot to do on the product team side. And the product team also, let's say, stood up really strong in context to that, okay, how further they can enhance to automate on their side. And then a lot of product teams actually engaged following the best practices in terms of having every time the pipeline around the delivery, and that delivery pipeline then we utilized in terms of giving the service, which is, let's say, the first stage of Auth Analyzer, to their pipeline so that they can integrate within their pipeline seamlessly for generating, for example, the first output of OSS Review Toolkit. And this analyzer result is the only thing what we need then, because now we have decoupled the code repository understanding, plus, for example, the running of the analyzer on that code repository, because all the environment level issues can then be addressed directly by the developer, and they actually can resolve it because they know their environment the best. And once, for example, this output as analyzer result is available to us, then they have a possibility either to attach it to the service request, or they can actually pass it on, let's say, via the pipeline to our environment, where we initiate, let's say, using that analyzer scanning in a more automated way. And once, for example, the reports are generated, then it is ready for the analysis by the analyst team. Once the curation, analysis, enrichment is done, then it's also, let's say, automated to, let's say, hand over the SBOM, let's say, going from one system to another system. And the last, let's say, system standing in the process lifecycle is actually the legal workflow tool, where, for example, then legal gets enabled to review, for example, their product SBOM submission, and then they actually can provide the approval directly from the system itself. So that's, let's say, in just, for example, the end-to-end process lifecycle. How did we connect each and every actor and all the systems running in the process lifecycle? So that's where, for example, the actual overall architecture comes into play, because it was also not about that we actually have one service to solve all the problems, because there might be possibility where OSS Review Toolkit actually may not support that particular code repository nature, and we might actually have to run through the secondary service. So we also, let's say, in our portfolio have more than one service, but core remains OSS Review Toolkit. So that's where we mapped each and every, let's say, swim lane towards the step of the process lifecycle, where you see, for example, the code repository, the persona being, for example, the product team here, because that's the first point of actor who needs to do something. And in that context, they actually were given this Auth as a service to them. And they have the flexibility to either run it locally or, for example, integrate it with their pipeline. And when they actually are able to generate this analyzer result, then we placed, for example, in between our custom developed application, which is called Data Platform. And Data Platform is actually the central focal point of integrating each and every system in the ecosystem, as well as in the process lifecycle, because the data is moving from stage 1 to stage 2. And that's how, for example, at least one system should be made aware about each and every action taking place in the process lifecycle. And that's where we achieved, for example, full automation by placing, for example, Data Platform, because every interaction, even, let's say, whether it is business information that needs to be transferred or the SBOM collection towards reporting, everything then goes via Data Platform. And then Data Platform actually takes over to initiate, let's say, the scanning with the core service. Once, for example, the results are generated, then Data Platform reports back to the service request automatically. And once the curation is done, then from the service request itself, the analyst have been given a possibility that, okay, they can trigger, let's say, an event, which probably will collect the complete SBOM and automatically will transfer, for example, to the legal workflow system, which is in our case, FOSSI. And we also, let's say, in parallel, have our own front-end system to have a 360-degree view on the whole execution. And this is where, for example, we have also built, let's say, a FOSS hub portal. That's what we name it, where, for example, you will see every system information available in a single system, which is also served from data platform. But I will just, let's say, show you the quick glimpse of it. So with the whole aspect, I'm starting with, let's say, from my service request, because that's the first communication towards open source program office. You see, for example, all the requests which are falling under us to respond is, let's say, captured from system, let's say one, that is Jira. Then analyst actually can view, for example, that, okay, this is the scan which took place, whatever they handed over. And now we go, for example, to auth, and we, for example, have the full picture on the software bill of materials as well, where, for example, we are capturing each and everything in context to whatever is needed for SBOM to be reported to the legal. Then once, for example, the curations are done and the analysts actually are comfortable to be able to distribute this information to the legal system, then you have, for example, an event which you can fire directly from FOSS Hub, which will take, for example, the complete SBOM and the business information to the legal system for them to start the review. At the same time, we also, let's say, prepared, because we are having the complete holistic view about all the product running in our organization. And that's where, for example, we also created, it's a kind of knowledge base where we are collecting all the dependency information with their versions. And also, for example, we collect information about that who is actually using this particular dependency, because it might be that product A developer is using this dependency and product B want to actually utilize this dependency, but he requires some understanding. So he actually has a possibility to talk to the product A developer one to share some knowledge, so that we try to achieve, for example, shorter time to market, rather than everybody is, let's say, researching, analyzing, and thinking in terms of how, for example, they can incorporate this dependency in their respective product. At the same time, when we are doing the scanning, we are also, let's say, collecting the vulnerabilities as well. And this is where, for example, we collect every vulnerability, which is then handed over to the security department. And then security department has, let's say, one view on it, so that they actually can immediately take some remediation around those dependency if that dependency is, let's say, identified as, let's say, critical or high, depending on their SLA. And then they actually can also talk to the respective product teams or to the point of contacts to make certain action plan around the resolution. And at the same time, when we are talking about, let's say, the vulnerability identified, we are also, let's say, reporting into the service request immediately that there are dependency which are being identified in your product, which are identified as vulnerable. So if you want to, let's say, proactively resolve by yourself, then we are also giving that opportunity to making the data transparent. I'm going back to so this is the code repository target. This is the service where we're publishing OSS review toolkit towards the product team integrating with their environment to be able to generate, for example, the metadata of their code repository. That is handed over to our, let's say, data platform. Data platform is communicating to the scanning environment, which has, let's say, multiple services in it. And then it is processing the data, let's say, sitting in the backend to collect and have the 360-degree view on the data. And once, for example, everything is, let's say, somewhat analyzed, then it is also, let's say, handed over to make it available for the legal system for review and approval. So that's where the overall architecture comes into play when we talk about, for example, mapping it to the process lifecycle. We are hosted on AWS. I'm not sure if this is interesting, but this is, for example, the infrastructure architecture, where, for example, we have segmented in a way, for example, because we have to take care of a lot of security consideration. And that's how, for example, it is segregated, defined with respect to per system boundaries, so that one system, if getting compromised, should not affect, for example, any other system. So this is, let's say, very purely specific towards, let's say, incorporating whatever, for example, POSHA security standards are. This is the, let's say, service request system. Probably it's a better view. So this is where the first point of contact gets started between the product teams and us. So the product team is a developer or point of contact, whosoever is responsible knows their product, and they will then initiate, for example, whether they actually are creating a request under in-house, if it is developed in-house, or, for example, if a software is being developed by, let's say, a supplier. That's pretty much how we are handling the FOSS compliance part from POSHA standpoint.
So thank you, Rishi. This was very interesting. Are there any questions to Rishi? No, obviously not. By the way, I have one question.
Yep. Good.
Okay, there's also another question. Why Black Duck is Reto asking. We have tested Scan OSS. So what was Black Duck already there, or did you? When did you decide to use Black Duck?
So Black Duck. So when we were evaluating, let's say, different services, let's say from the scanning standpoint, OSS Review Toolkit was actually topping the chart. But at that point in time, when we were actually going with OSS Review Toolkit, it was also work in progress in terms of introducing, for example, more and more package manager support, because it actually listens to the package managers. And at that point in time, we actually designed it in a way that if, for example, some package manager is not supported by OSS Review Toolkit, then we have a second service, for example, we can run against, so that the product and the respective code repository is not blocked to get the compliance check. So that was the reason to introduce, for example, Black Duck in the portfolio. But I think that now the maturity level of OSS Review Toolkit is very high in general as well as in our ecosystem. And that's where, for example, core service as OSS Review Toolkit is able to handle, for example, pretty much everything.
Okay. Okay, then it might be that it's no longer needed in future. Okay. There's another question. What is the difference in the approach of analyzing in-house or supplier developed code? Is there a difference?
So when we talk about, let's say, the supplier developed software, so when we talk about supplier developed software, then we are not handing over our core service for them to scan it. So this is purely based on, if you see here, when we talk about supplier developed software, then a business information is captured over a service request, and then the coordination parts gets activated in terms of that, okay, supplier is understanding what we need in terms of consultation. They run their respective tool, software, whatever, to generate the SBOM, and then they are reporting directly into the legal system, because we are not, let's say, allowing them to use our ecosystem for their purpose. And that's where it differentiates the process between in-house and supplier.
Okay, as far as I understood now, own developed code is handled via ORT and the other tools, and the supplier developed code you are, let's say, requiring a complete SBOM, and this is handed over to the legal department, or?
Yes.
Okay, so now I think it's clear. So coming back to my question,
Yeah, sure.
Can you share the slides with us so that we can make it available, or is it not a good idea?
I mean, these are all, let's say, internal information, but yes,
Okay.
the information what we share usually in different, let's say, summit conferences or meetings, that is all, let's say, open to discuss. But I can check with Nick, for example. He's on vacation right now, and for example, if he approves, then I don't mind.
Okay, that would be cool, because this overall process picture is is very informative, but it's, I think one has to look at least 10 or 20 minutes on it to understand everything.
Absolutely. This I agree. Yeah, true.
Cool. Are there further questions to Rishi? No, obviously not. So thank you again. This was really.
Sorry, Oliver, I was too slow on my microphone, but I would really have a question to Rishi. So, what do you think is next? The next level? What is on your roadmap? Where would you see their improvement?
So right now, what we are trying to do is, I can share this information. So when we talk about OSS Review Toolkit, then OSS Review Toolkit also has certain, let's say, shortcomings, right? So what we are trying to do is that we are trying to utilize scan code, and we are trying to integrate scan code with data platform, so that we have a fallback in the service also running in an automated manner. If you are talking from a technical context, if you're talking about more from a business strategy standpoint, then I think we, let's say, are doing a lot of research right now in terms of how to take it, let's say, forward. But that would be subjected to being Nick's topic rather than mine.
Okay, thank you. And concerning further advisory databases, like, did you already have thought about also using then those health metrics from chaos, etc., and all this discussion?
We're already using it. So we already have, for example, this chaos system for the contribution matrix, if you're talking about that.
For example, yes.
Yeah.
And
so
is it also here? Do you use it here in the advisor, or is this a separate then based on?
No, it is only used, let's say, in the context to the contribution for measuring, for example, certain KPIs and certain, let's say, used for the analytical purposes. Let's say what our other players in the automotive are doing, but this is, let's say, more about, let's say, targeting the contribution, but not, for example, that we are solely using, let's say, to look up some advisories, let's say, from Chaos.
Yeah, because I think there were discussions also to check if, well, is there perhaps only one maintainer in a product in a project, or is this project not maintained for over, let's say, 18 months or something like that? So this is not what you're currently looking at, or is this also something that you all? Oh, okay.
No, we are not right now.
Personally, I think those metrics can lead you to the wrong track.
Yes,
For
I think so
example,
too.
if you look at ZLib, ZLib has seldom updates, but it's a very very stable and well implemented thing. So saying okay, everything which was not updated for 6 months or more is crap. I wouldn't agree. So that's.
I mean, I think that such matrices to discuss about is very specific to each and every organization.
Yes.
And at the same time, it is a very subjective topic, you know. For
Yeah.
example, there was a big discussion in terms of that, okay, how to measure the contribution towards, let's say, an open source software. Is, let's say, counting the commits or the pull request enough for to understand that, okay, we have, let's say, the highest contribution? In our context, the answer is no. So that's why it becomes very subjective in terms of, you know, what you're targeting as a KPI.
Yes, I agree to you, Rishi. Okay, then I think we have to give Augustine the chance to do his presentation. Sorry for this packed agenda, but again, thank you. It was really really interesting, Rishi. And now,
Thank you.
Augustine, are you ready to go? Hello.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. You know how to share the screen, of course, or you know.
I hope yes.
There's a plus sign on the left bottom of the. Yes, it's. I see your slide. So please, the stage is yours.
Okay. Oops, sorry about that. Pop up twice. There we go. So you are seeing it in big, or because I see it small?
Whatever
Okay.
you mean with big, but I can see it at least.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm supposed to do this in 10 minutes. My goal here was just to provide a heads up of what's new on the osskb.org front, given that we have released the core open data set behind the service. And we have also released a command line tool to make use of that open data set. So I will provide you context in, let's say, 3 to 4 minutes, and then 5-6 minutes talking about what we have released at the Software Transparency Foundation, with obviously the tight help of Scan OSS. All right, so let me. Okay, so I'm not going to introduce myself. Well, I'm just going to mention that I'm an independent consultant, and I've been a small part of my time is sponsored by the Software Transparency Foundation to work on foundation topics. All right, so the idea is very simple. From the foundation point of view, we have this say that is you can comply with what you cannot see, and by see we mean declare. And the whole idea is how you create complete and accurate response of any software composition. That's what drives all the activity that we do. And basically, when you think about the 4 main steps to create a complete and accurate SBOM, we focus on 3 specific points: on the detection of open source software, and then on the enrichment with basic information, enrichment of with metadata of basic license compliance information. All right, so I'm not going to talk about the foundation here. Very quickly, osskb.org is a flagship service from the foundation, and basically provides access to a knowledge base called OSSKB. And basically for detecting open source software, as I mentioned, either to create SBOMs, to check for AI plagiarism, for making audits and POCs, research, and then for license compliance. Now, there are several aspects that make this service unique. I'm gonna just mention here two: the privacy friendly by design. The service do not require any authentication, nothing, and also do not track what you are scanning or detecting. And then the idea of vendor locking. Until now, the last couple of years, 3 years that we have been running the service, we always said, look, there is no vendor locking because everything that we do is made with open source software. Everything up from the technology behind the knowledge base to how do we take the open source software, create the fingerprints with an open source implementation of the algorithms for the detection, up to how we run the entire service. But it's true that the data was not open source. It was free of charge, but not open source. And that's what is changing now. So from the trust point of view, I think we have taken a significant step forward. It's just the first one of several. And then another thing that every time that I talk about this is increasing is the service is a backend service. You access through an open API. And the SCA tools that are integrated with the service is growing. For example, Geronimo, which helps the Software Transparency Foundation, and it's him, it's Scanos developer, provided a talk about at the Theia Con a few weeks back to describe the integration between this IDE that is popular in embedded environments and OSSKB.org. In that case, to detect potential code similarities with AI-generated code, for instance. So the number of tools are increasing, which provides a challenge because that means more users, more workload for the foundation, and running centralized services where anyone can access. It's very, very complex and very, very expensive, as you probably have seen the last few weeks with all these downtimes from very popular cloud services. Okay, so our main target is the SCA tooling developers, and that's why basically we are here, right? It's not the only target audience, but it's the most popular one. All right, so we are now basically running over 1 million scanned files per month. And this is increasing. So, every year we are basically adding a digit. So that puts pressure on the membership part. So we need to bring more members in order to have more money to scale up the service. And basically the foundation, what it does is provide quality of service. So outliers and then try to run the service in the best way we can to make sure that anyone can use it. And then we have special cases for special agreements for special use cases. For example, open source projects. That's one of the main ones. The knowledge base behind the service is huge. Now you see there, we are going to be really close this year to reach 300 million URLs. That means projects that are part of the knowledge base. So we are talking about incredibly big numbers. All right, and yeah, so this is I'll share the slides in the mailing list. So you have there a link to a brochure that explains absolutely everything in detail. I remember last year there was a point for improvement from our side to improve our technical documentation, which is always a struggle, but we have done partly, and in the for the different tools. But in the case of the service, I think we have created a very good brochure that explains everything. All right, what we've done, this is new. So the core part of the knowledge base, which are the most used open source software projects, we have created the fingerprints with the open source implementation of the winnowing algorithm, which is the one we use, and we just have open source it with CC0 license. So basically, you have the fingerprints of the files, but also the snippets. So you can now, anyone can leverage this data set to detect code similarities, plagiarism at snippet level locally. You can either incorporate this open data set to your own SCA tool, or you can incorporate it to any service that you have. So it's about 1.2 gigabytes. Correct me here. I think there are a couple of Mariano and Olmo who were participating on this. If I say something wrong, feel free to correct me. And you have the link there. So basically, one of the things we had to do in the Software Transparency Foundation, we have been working the last 6 months in order to have the minimum collaboration framework documents in place in order to be able to host our first open data and open source software projects. So we had to do the paperwork, the homework, right? The legal framework, approve it, and then be able to host our first projects. We are learning here, right? So it's a very small foundation, and these are the first time that we do this, so we are learning as we go. Oh, sorry, it's terabytes of data. Yeah, you're right. Not gigabytes, but terabytes. I will correct that. You are absolutely right. Yeah, that's why I asked, because I thought, that's too small. Yes, it's terabytes. I will make sure that corrected before sharing the slides. Okay, so that's what we done. But, as usually happens with open data sets, we need to showcase, or the best way to have people consuming it is showcasing how you can use it. And what we've done is we have created a command line tool to showcase how you can consume and use the open data set, in this case for a specific use case that is very relevant to STF. As you know, probably we have been done research about code similarities and how the risk of plagiarism done by LLM generated code assistant. We went to OSS, Open Source Summit Europe. We went to the AI-Dev events, explaining the research we've done recently to SFSCon. So we are talking about this research that we are doing, that we did, that confirmed previous research that says that basically these AI code assistants are there are serious risk of plagiarism of open source code snippets. So authors of open source, we are trying to put the word out there to the authors of open source. Your code is being copied and distributed without copyright notices, or even with copyright notices of these AI assistants. What do we want to do about it? Okay, so FTF Plagi Check, what it does is a command line tool developed in Go that leverage the open data set to detect verbatim copies of files or snippets in your own code base. That's basically what it does. So you have a reference of how to leverage the open data set, but also it's actually a very useful tool to run if you are an open source developer or if you are a researcher. So in summary, what we've done now is we used to have the OSSKB, which is a knowledge base. We used to have the service, and then we are in either ourselves or our member companies, or like LGE or especially ScanOSS, or the SCA tool developers. I always put the case of Foslight, who they did their own integration, but for example, we integrated with ORT. So what we are doing basically is those tools allow us to have different use cases to scan software either in pipelines or locally against a service. Now what we've done is open a possibility to do purely local scans. And well, from the Software Transparency Foundation point of view, we will be promoting this open data set and maintaining this open data set with the help of ScanOSS. They are the main supporter for this activity. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to do this by ourselves. So, and then maybe either incorporating more projects or finding ways to make it easier to consume it, or maybe putting software there to leverage other use cases. We'll see. Right now we are dealing also with a lot of overhead internally in the Software Transparency Foundation, given that these are the first projects, so we have to leverage policies and roles and yeah. So it's a very, very interesting first step of our journey. So 2 conclusions here. First, Software Transparency Foundation now hosts open data sets and open source software. And our first example is OSSKB core open dataset and STF Plagi check. So this complements the offering we have with OSSKB.org. And now you can do something that you couldn't before. And hopefully we are providing a stronger open source, open data profile to the service. So the messaging of no vendor locking actually can be fully trusted. So, and what we can offer, if you find it interesting whenever in the future, is a deep dive on the open data set and how to use it using PlagiCheck or any other tool provided by the engineers, Mariano, Jerónimo. So you can actually see this in action. That's about it from my side on the heads up.
So thank you, Augustine. This was very interesting. Of course, I think this would be really, really nice if we can have a session how to use, how to leverage all this, which isn't yet available, in one of our next meetings, perhaps in the first Wednesday meeting of December. I do not know, but if you are available and the others are available, I think it would be a very good idea.
Okay, yeah, I'll confirm that in the mailing list. But yes, I will propose that to the technical guys. Yes.
Martin is asking, has anyone tried it yet out? Tried it yet? So.
Beyond us, we don't have any reference at the moment.
Okay.
We released it 2 weeks ago, so it's brand new.
It's really new. Yes. Are there further questions to Augustine?
Yes. Will that be also? Are you in contact with the Octet project? Are they also looking at it of integrating it via their setup?
And no, right now we are basically raising awareness. So I'll make a note and try to figure out who I can talk to and
Sebastian Oertmet, I can forward you the
yes, thank you.
Yes, because the fine thing is I'm in contact with him because of my public showcase that I'm preparing, and he offered me to have a test server also for or server Octet, and here it would be great because then we could also if they would integrate the API as well, then we could also via ORT simulate and test and hear your setup. That would be super great.
But is it a service or is it data you can use locally? As far as I have understood, you can use it locally, or Augustine?
Yes. So what we just released is the open data set that you can download and use it locally.
Okay.
I think that what Marcel could be referring to is the service, the osskb.org.
Yeah, but this is okay. But you have quotas on the service, or do you? As far as I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes. So if you hammer API requests, Marcel, I think you will be slowed down. Okay, cool. Nevertheless, I can also forward this information to Andreas Kotula, who is also one of the core members of the Octet project.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I will do so.
Yeah, so please try it out.
Yeah.
There is no. I mean, the first time that somebody tries, snippet level detection in the open, it's a cool feeling. You are used to only trying these kind of things with expensive commercial solutions. So we are looking forward to have people trying it out and consuming it in different ways, especially researchers. Hopefully they will use it also.
Okay. Yeah, but then I really would recommend to have a follow-up session, either the first Wednesday meeting in December, or I think the second Wednesday meeting in December is right before Christmas. So I think that's not a good idea. To see, okay, what has to be done, how has this to be set up in order to make use of the data. So that would be really great.
Yeah, so those of you who don't want to wait for the slide deck to be on the list, just go to Software Transparency Foundation GitHub. Maybe Mariano or Jerónimo can put the link in the chat to the GitHub page where you can go to the FTP server and download the open data set right away.
Put it as a short email on the mailing list that have a better reach than only in the chat.
Here is. Let me just do it myself.
Cool.
So that's
great. Thank you. Are there further questions to Austin?
all right. Thank you.
Then thank you very much. Really interesting, and looking forward to the follow-up talk. Is there any other business you want to share, or is Martin? You have raised your hand, so please go ahead.
Just going to say very brief that the group had working on the basic one.
Oh, your voice is really chopped, Martin. So I have difficulties to follow you.
I probably my connection, so I'll just occasion work data ready for file via the mailing list anyway.
So I'm not quite sure whether I got it. So because your voice is chopped, nevertheless, I think you were talking about the course. So this Linux Foundation course about introduction open source compliance management course introduction. So you probably need some eyes on the material and let's say contributions, or The update of the course is ready for final comment review. Yes. So thank you for this heads up, Martin. It's quite a lot of material. And Yari is saying that he has a couple of issues raised, and he has also done a pull request. But perhaps we can have a walkthrough in also one of the next meetings, Martin, through this training material. Cool.
I will try to reach out to Martin and try to prepare something with him.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, cool. Further topics? No, obviously not. So we had 2 interesting sessions, and this heads up from Martin about the course material, so that it needs review and comments, and also these issues by Yari and his pull request.
Our next session will be beginning of December, you said, right?
Yes, the first Wednesday, as usual, in December. I do not know what the exact date is.
Should be the 3rd of December then.
Yes,
so
the 3rd.
Maybe I have then also the simulation already ready, so that I could at least give a sneak peek. So the good news is that Helio, he provided me a Software 360 test instance.
Okay.
With Octet, I will potentially get this old server instance, and the dummies are already online. So I'm still optimistic that I will manage to really have everything public and ready to reuse by everyone.
Okay, cool. Yeah, then, so we have 2 more talks, or 3 in the pipeline, which is this your talk, Marcel, an update of Augustine regarding how to use all the public available data, and also Martin to walk through this training material about open source compliance management. Cool, great. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your attendance and your patience. And since we are already 5 minutes over time, I want to conclude the call. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening or a nice day. And yeah, see or hear you latest in 2 weeks again. Thank you and bye-bye.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.